Cycling is a sport which knows a bit about drug scandals, and few can talk with the personal experience of David Millar. He went from being a young man who wanted nothing to do with drugs to having the cycling world at his feet, to being banned from cycling for using the illegal blood doping technique EPO. Now he is vehemently anti-doping and helps with the World Anti-Doping Agency in its anti-doping endeavours.
The first bike that really captured my heart was a Rally Super Tough Burner from the 1980s. I must have been 7 or 8 years old. I could tell quite early on with my peers that I had something extra. I had the X factor. I could always do bigger jumps when I was more tricks. I could go fast. And the road was really the thing I fell in love with. And naturally, what's the pinnacle of that? It's the Tour de France. And I was living in Hong Kong at the time when I fell in love with the Tour de France, and I became the only thing that got me into it was coming back from Hong Kong to visit my mother who lived in England, and her joining me into a local cycling club, which we have all over the UK. These lovely, which many would consider, they were for a long time antiquated, but they're things that have kept the sport alive in our sport before the current boom. And they're the time trial clubs, and that's what got me into it.
When you became an elite cyclist, given your gift, what was your view at that stage of doping?
Complete naivety. I went to France when I was 18, came back from Hong Kong, was going to go to art college, asked my mum if I could push it back a year, asked then sent a letter to the art college asking if that would be acceptable, and said I'm going to go to Belgium and France and race my bike, which, believe me, in 1996 there was no spectre of riches and glory. It was kind of like it was just the thing that I really wanted to do. It was my dream. And I've spoken of it before. It was a childhood's end. I went from this naivety, this distant idea of what it was like, and then turned pro, and within the first few months realized it was riddled with drugs. And this beautiful romantic vision I had of this extreme sport where it was filled with gentlemen and exceptional human behavior and sporting acts was actually fueled by drugs.
And did you consider at that point, as naivety melted away, did you think, well, this isn't something I want to be part of, maybe I'll please mum and go to art college after all?
Oh, I hated it. No. I think each one of us did. You'll find very few that came into it and were like, yeah, like kind of clapped their hands and rubbed them together and thought, this is exactly what I was waiting for. And it was in February of my first year, in my first race, I was rooming with a guy called Jim van der Laar, and somebody came into the room and said, you need to take this for tomorrow. It was a cortisone pill. And I remember then leaving the room and calling my mum and saying, this isn't what I expected. And she said to me, why don't you come back home, we can go to art college. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I was very lucky at the time. My director sportif, that was the team manager, was a guy called Cyril Guimard. And he'd taken me out for a lunch when I was amateur in France. And this guy is the legend. He was like Sir Alex Ferguson of cycling in the 1970s, 80s and early 90s. He'd signed Bernardino, Laurent Fignon, Greg LeMond. He'd had this incredible hit rate with signing young guys and turning them into Tour de France winners. And he'd signed me with his ambition of making me a Tour de France winner. That I spoke to him when I realized the drugs were going on, and he knew it was going on. He didn't like it. And he said to me, David, you don't do them.
And so when did you decide, and how did you decide that actually what was something you would have rejected previously was something you would get involved in?
I was a very moralistic young man. I credit to my parents and my family, the people around me. I was very well brought up. I knew right and wrong. But we forget how much we rely on our peer group, our family and friends, the people we grow up. That's our tribe, our troop. And if we don't have them around us, then we move into a different thing. Then we become, and I was living in Biarritz, and I had this weird life. And it got to the point where the only thing that mattered in my life, I'd left all my friends. They'd all gone to universities. Their whole period from leaving school till that whole university period, I was in France kind of racing bikes and becoming conditioned to be a pure bike racer. And part of that meant chipping away where you came from. And it got to the point where all of a sudden I thought, well, this is all I am. It's like, why have I been overly concerning myself about the rights and wrongs of this? Because obviously nobody else cares. I mean, obviously, it's pretty evident what's going on. And you could tell the international governing body, they knew what was going on, but they weren't doing anything about it. The older guys, the older riders in the team who are my mentors, they knew about it, they weren't doing anything about it. The father figure, the manager, they knew about it, they weren't doing anything about it. And all of a sudden you think, why am I worrying about it? And so that was really what happened to me. I just gave up caring about it.
And so what were you doing that was doping, and how was it, and how long did you get away with it for?
The year I doped, won 6 races that year before I doped, and I'd been in the top 10 in the world. And yet when I went to the Tour de France that year, and I'd won the opening prologue the year before, that was expected. And I knew I'd done 58 days racing before the Tour de France prologue that year, which would be just bonkers in the modern world. And I got there and I was exhausted. I'd become the team leader of the number 1 French team as this 24-year-old Scotsman living in France. And I'd left behind all my friends and family, and I really did feel this team was my family. And I crashed, and I took so many risks in that first prologue. I crashed very heavily in the last quarter because I was taking risks that I shouldn't have been, because I knew that was the only way I could stand a chance of winning. Battered up my left side of my body, suffered through the next days. It was horrible. Eventually gave up on the 10th day. And then that night I was taken aside by a team manager and also the older rider in the team, who I knew was the kind of the fixer in the team. An Italian guy used to be the fixer. And he had been for 2 or 3 of our very successful, very, let's say, doped riders in the previous years. And they took me to a room. They said to me, David, go home, look after yourself, take a break, and then go and do a couple of races, and then why don't you go and stay at this guy's house? Prépare bien. It was the kind of the term we used, the lexicon, you're dope. And they also said, the thing is, we've already spoken to the organisers, the only way the team's going to be allowed to do the Vuelta is if you go. And I remember walking into that room, convinced I wasn't going to dope, walked out of it and thought, a month from now, I'm going to go to Italy and I'm going to dope. And that was it. And I went there and it was very innocuous. I was staying in a very beautiful villa in Tuscany, the lovely family. And then in the evening, when everyone got to bed, I get an injection in my arm. And I turned into an aeroplane and just dominated the Vuelta the first week, won 2 stages on the leader's jersey. But I never got any of the emotion I ever got before from that. And then over the next 3 years, I won the Tour de France stage in 2002 clean, then finished that, went and doped again in August for the Vuelta, and then the next year I did it again twice in preparation for the Tour de France and the World Championships, which I won. And then I met Dave Browse from the British cycling team, who introduced me to a new method and taught me that it was possible to kind of get the best out of yourself without doping. And so I based it, I won the Worlds, and so I'm going to do the 2004 Athens Olympics next year, do the track and the road, and I'm going to do it clean, I'm going to win gold medal. Then my team got caught up in a doping scandal, and I was involved in it, obviously, and I was arrested about a month before the Olympics, and then it all just came crumbling down.
What was crumbling like?
Everybody in all walks of life, when stuff gets really bad, when it's either, I don't know, your business has fallen to pieces, or your marriages and you get divorced, or somebody's died, it's not the moment that's very hard. It's the ensuing days, weeks, months, years of just watching everything crumble apart. And then one day you just, I mean, I used to say it's in French again, it's a descending spiral, spirale descendant. You're just stuck in it, just going down, and bits of your life just keep breaking away, and you never know, you can't see the bottom. The weird thing is, as it all goes, it's just kind of, you get used to it, you get used to your life falling apart, and then one day you just hit the bottom, and you realize, okay, that's it, I got nothing left, it's all gone. And it's the most liberating, it's almost like enlightenment. You realize that it's quite good to be able to look up again rather than look down.
By the way, during the doping years, and you perfectly explained the context, the Foreign Legion aspect, these people being your family, but you also described yourself as having been a moralistic young man. Understanding all the pressures and the context you've explained, did that voice ever speak much during those doping years, or was he silenced?
Just became my, my conscience was strong. I mean, I think it's the reason some of us handle it well, some of us don't. I didn't sleep well again. I became more extreme in my behavior. Socializing meant kind of really almost destroying myself, drinking too much, just enjoying escapism through alcohol. All the money I was making, I just spent on everybody else. It was like the money meant nothing to me. It was kind of, I didn't feel like I deserved it. I became very bipolar in my behavior. I was either locked up, training, disappearing off the grid, or I was out being a Gatsby-like figure.
And so there you were, having gone down the spiral and finally found bottom, and you were looking up and felt somewhat better for it. Tell me about the journey back.
I went pretty deep for a while there. I got banned and very relieved to be banned. I didn't like myself. I hated my sport more. I hated the people. I hated the fact that, and you have to understand for athletes, and this is a sad thing probably to this day, when an athlete tests positive and we're jettisoned immediately. There is no, if you like, our due process involves an almost inquisition-like process. It's black and white. You're right and wrong. We are fully culpable. There's no one else. The powers that be carry on, and the athletes, we are left to wither and disappear, hopefully, so we can't actually vilify what's actually going on. And I saw that, and I thought, this isn't fair. And my biggest thing was, I remember, mine was quite an extreme thing in that I was arrested by Parisian drug squad in Biarritz and had my shoelaces taken out. I was then locked up for 48 hours in a cell in Biarritz and interrogated and all these things. And they took me to my apartment. They went into my apartment in Biarritz with guns and sat me in the middle of the room in a chair, and you had bad cop, good cop, you had medium cop. It was pretty impressive to watch how they do it, and they kind of just broke me down for a long time. And I remember being in the cell, laying there and thinking, no, this isn't why I turned pro. This isn't Tour de France. This isn't. And I remember laying there and couldn't sleep, and I realised it's all over. And that was the moment where we talked about the crumbling and descending spiral. I suddenly realised I had this beautiful house, this villa that I was building in Biarritz, and this deal with Jaguar, and I was getting a car. I had these material things, and I was raiding world champion, and I was leading the number one, as a Scotsman, leading the number one French team, and I was kind of friends with the mayor of Biarritz. And I just lay there, and I thought, none of that matters. And I thought, what? You are such an idiot to think that any of that mattered. And that was the kind of the beginning, if you like, of the kind of the fixing. And then it took about another 8 months, and then I came back, and when I hit the bottom and realized, right, we're here now. This is where I've got to pay back all my debts, all the tax evasion I had, all the drugs I'd taken, all the kind of the people I've let down, all these things. I thought, okay, I can do this. I'm going to fix this. And I suppose that's where I went back to being a teenage me, who was very well brought up and I went back to my kind of essence, the way I'd been brought up and the person I am, and it was, now I'm going to get in contact with the anti-doping agencies. I'm going to do the interviews. I'm going to talk to people. I want to share this story. I want to make sure that no 19-year-old kid like me who turned pro ever has to end up in a cell in Biarritz. We've had the most incredible shift in our sport. We were the worst. From 1998, the Festina affair, which was the big one where they found a car filled with EPO and hormones, etc. That event in 1998, which forced the creation of the World Anti-Doping Agency in 1999. So that's how recent all this is, if you like. Now, after cycling had its monumental revealing of its issues in 1998, that forced the world to go, wow, this is happening in sport, this is happening at Tour de France, we should maybe do something about this. And so WADA was created in 1999, and then over the years, then they've been pushing. Cycling has become the vanguard of anti-doping. If you're 19 and you've got the skill set and you've got the will and you find yourself in the right situation, you've got the right people around you, there's no reason why one day you can't win a Tour de France without drugs. It's possible. But there are other sports where they're just in their infancy of anti-doping. The IAAF is having its 1998 Festina affair right now. It's like, how is that possible? We see FIFA going through what it's going through right now. We're going to look back in 20, 50 years and look back at international sport, late 20th century, early 21st century. It's going to look like medieval times. Everyone's had their eyes wide shut for years now. Why are all these international governing bodies based in Switzerland or Monaco, where they're almost untouchable unless an American federal investigation forces them to open their books, like what happened at FIFA, unless a German investigative journalist look into the IAAF. This is the only way they get caught out at the moment. I was on the World Anti-Doping Agency Athletes Committee, and I was put on that as a first ever ex-doper, and that was through the foresight of UK anti-doping, who are probably one of the figureheads of global anti-doping, national anti-doping organisations, the NADOs, because of how they've been the last 6-7 years and how they've changed. They've made themselves autonomous. They've gone from being funded to being autonomous. And Andy Parkinson, who was their boss, pushed forward for me to go to WADA because he thought if we need to change things, we need to have somebody who has dopes. That's how we'll learn things. Because up to there, you just have white knights on there. You have people who've never done anything, and you don't learn. And I remember then the 2009 World Championships, Athletic World Championships in Berlin, the year after the Olympics, as a member of WADA. And I was taken aside by somebody from IAAF. I honestly can't remember who, but it was somebody who worked at IAAF. And he said, do you think we could have a drink later? I said, yeah, I'm busy, but we can meet at 6. We met there, and he said, Dave, I need you to explain to me how you guys are changing it around in cycling. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And he said, why? He said, because we are riddled with it at the moment in athletics, and nobody's doing anything about it. And we knew this, and why people knew this, but we couldn't do anything about it because there was biological passport results and suspicions. But you can't pursue. It's the WADA is a kind of an umbrella organisation. Then you have to rely on the NADOs and the sponsors and people and the kind of internally to do something. And nobody internally was doing anything about this IAAF. And that's been going on for a long time. And it goes deeper than that, even in regards when you go down to agents, etc., in the Caribbean. The whole kind of system is a bit dysfunctional.
Former pro cyclist David Millar.